Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we exhume the corpses of movie franchises to find out which film is already dead and yet it moves. I am the Avenger, the killer of killers, and joining me are a whole jolly club with jolly pirate nicknames.
Do you know what they call a gathering of crows, Curve? A murder of crows. Think about it. I'm Griner.
And I'm Luke, or the Crow, and it can't rain all the time.
It's nice, iconic. All right, talking about The Crow, the much adored and equally maligned gothic romance revenge fantasy superhero horror franchise. So this franchise consists of 5 movies and 1 TV show.
Goodness.
And so just for the sake of it, just please wait your turn. We'll get to the continuity. Just for the continuity's sake, that consists of The Crow in 1994, The Crow City of Angels in 96, Crow Salvation in 2000, The Crow Wicked Prayer in 2005, and the recent remake in 2024. And the show was somewhere in there. I don't really care where. So we've got to get this out of the way. What movies of these did you guys actually watch? Because there was some confusion and some changes that were out of our hands where a certain cinema didn't play a certain film.
Our local cinema screwed us. They said they were going to play The Crow, and then the reviews came out and they dropped it. They dropped it from their schedule. So I watched the first one, and then, as God intended, I watched the second one at 360p 1.25 speed on YouTube. And they're the two I've seen.
Wonderful.
And I watched the original for the first time ever, and that was it. But I would have watched the remake had it come to our cinema.
Yes.
Look, you're good. I know you're good for it. So you're the only one here who's committed to the bit with the makeup. Exactly. Watch this on YouTube if you're at home, because you'll see Luke committing. It's pretty cool. So for the record, I've seen all of the movies. I've seen some of the TV show as well. I don't know how much, but
was that by choice or?
Yeah, look, you got to understand. We will get to this a bit, but you got to understand this movie changes you when you see it at the right age. Like, truly, truly makes an impression, and there's a reason why it's one of the most important movies of the 90s. And so, seeing this as a young and impressionable boy who was already sort of into, the gothic macabre stuff, it imprinted on me like so many werewolves and
like Twilight
vampires. Yes, exactly right. Yeah. And so naturally, after I'd seen this and I realized there were more Crow movies, I sought them out and I watched them, and I probably liked them, but I don't think I liked them that much because they're hard to like. But so for this podcast, we'll talk about mainly just the first one. But we'll talk about the second one. Griner and I will have some interesting things to say about that, and I will give my thoughts on the remake because I don't know. It's interesting to see what they're doing and what it says about the franchise at large, et cetera, et cetera. But honestly, the third movie is actually okay. Crow Salvation. It's not as bad as some others. The fourth one, Wicked Prayer, is a big pile of shit. So good thing we dodged balls there. Let's do some stats.
Stats.
The Crow, 1994, based on the graphic novel by James O'Barr, directed by an Australian, Alex Proyas. Made for a $23 million budget, grossed $94 million. It's a Metacritic score of 72 and an IMDb score of 75. The Crow City of Angels, 96, made $25.3 million to a budget of $13 million. Has no Metacritic score. It's an IMDb score of 4.6. The Crow 2024, budget of $50 million, has made $13 million so far. Not looking good. Metacritic of 30, and IMDb score of 4.7.
When our cinema scraps you from their coming lineup, it's not good signs.
Yeah. They have been playing Deadpool and Wolverine. Still, that's the only thing on there at the moment, basically.
As a sidebar, on Father's Day, I was looking at going to the movies at one point, and one of the screenings for Deadpool Wolverine was sold out, and the Crows were all just empty. This is
dear.
It's sad. And it's just, I'll just note it here because I probably will forget otherwise. The first 2 movies were made by Dimension Films and Miramax. Those are the Weinstein's former companies. Worth noting, they'll come up again later. And The Crow 2024, to speak to the problems, it has 8 production companies, and that's Lionsgate is distributors who have a knack of just distributing indie things that people don't really, sort of like the big small films that the big ones don't want to touch, and the other small ones don't have the money for. So if you have 8 production companies behind your movie, there's a problem there. Did you guys have anything you want to I don't know, initial thoughts, things to say about The Crow before we get into it?
I just look. There's a family of people that I love dearly, and they love these movies, and I don't want to like. If I
can't hurt us, we're invincible.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say. I'm not trying to hurt anyone with my views on this movie or its sequels. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay.
You can't. I'm dead and yet I walk. You can't hurt me with your words.
I mean, look, you've lived through all these sequels. Nothing can be worse than that.
That's not a real
what is it about The Crow that warrants so many attempts? Is that worth discussing now, or do you want to discuss that later?
I think probably when we discuss the reboot, I think that's a good place for discussion, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that is a big. I don't know if I have that much to say, but it is a big talking point that I had written down. Like I spent a lot of long walks in the rain with my makeup running, trying to figure this out. But look, all right, Luke, what about you? You've never seen this before, you said?
No, and obviously it's been quite influential on me, but I can see the appeal of this, and like honestly, for the longest time, what I saw The Crow as was Sting, the professional wrestler, because that's who I watched in the '90s, who was very clearly very heavily inspired from this. And there were so many parts in the movie where it would come up and I was like, oh my God. So that's what inspired that part of the theme song. And like, I was like, this is so cool. So it gave me a bit of a nostalgic trip for that, because Sting rocks. And so with that as my only thing, I honestly didn't even know what the plot of this was until reading the synopsis for the reboot. And I was like, this sounds awesome. Like this could be really cool. A supernatural John Wick, a supernatural gothic John Wick. Hell yeah, sign me up for it. But yeah, obviously we'll get into that when we talk about the reboot. But yeah, it was interesting to watch, and my wife had seen it and she remembered it well. She watched it when she was a kid, and yeah, it's definitely got a cult fandom, and that's the thing. Everyone talks about The Crow. I feel like you can't. And whether that's Brandon Lee and what happened with Brandon Lee, and you just hear about it referred to as that, that's how I knew about this whole thing. Every time I hear The Crow, I think about what happened with Brandon Lee, obviously, which was really tragic. People were talking about it when the thing happened with
Alec Baldwin.
Rust and Alec Baldwin. And yeah, it's a shame, and it's a real shame watching it when you're like, oh man, it sucks, because yeah, he's good. I think he plays it well, and yeah, I'm keen to talk about it and dissect it.
Yeah, his death is really part of the mythos, and definitely it is. I don't want to say gift, because it's not a gift; it is a tragedy. But it's kind of in a way a gift of this movie's status. His death could have added to the mystique, and in a movie all about mythology, it really sort of helps to to perpetuate this myth of its own existence, and sort of became a relic that people sought out and were like, you got to see this movie. It's the last one of this great actor. This was kind of the OG Dark Knight in terms of great actor dies, arguably before his prime or right in his prime. And, it's wow, he died with one last amazing performance. And it's we need to see this movie to honor him and this sort of stuff. And this definitely, yeah.
Did it get a cult following because of that? If that didn't happen, does this movie take off the way it did and still talked about in this day and age?
Yeah, I had wondered that too.
That's a great question. Obviously, we can't get an answer to that, but I think that's a big part of it. I think the movie stands up on its own. Movie, I believe is still good. We'll talk about it, but the cult around it is definitely helped by that. If Brandon Lee doesn't die in this, there is definitely no narrative around the tragedy. This movie, the original movie, helped change gun laws on film sets in America. So it had sort of repercussions that were felt through the industry and through the audience at large. There's definitely no mystique. There's definitely no sort of macabre interest in going to see this last movie. Brandon Lee definitely doesn't have the same, because he had made movies before this. He'd made about 3 or 4 small films, and he was the son of Bruce Lee. That was his thing. He was a handsome up and comer.
Did not
know that.
Yeah, okay,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so son of Bruce Lee. Obviously, he was in movies that had martial arts, and so he's clearly riffing on his father's energy. And he hadn't come into his own yet, but this is the movie where he sort of does. But yeah, his death definitely propagated more to it. And that becomes kind of, I think, the curse as well of the sequels, where we'll get to talk about it, but like when you have this legendary performance held up, it's hard to then ever do that again. Like, I don't know if you guys remember.
It's shameful that they did sequels.
Well, it's shameful that they did them so poorly as well. Like, we had this with the Joker, if you remember, where everyone was like, how can anyone follow Heath Ledger's performance? And, Jared Leto.
And they did Jared Leto.
Didn't follow it. But then, I don't know, and they did the show, but that was also underwhelming. But, like, who's he in the Batman? There's that cutscene with Barry Keoghan. So, like, they're still attempting, and I think people know you can do it, but there is kind of that, like, you've got to bring it up a notch if you want to match this.
Be different. You got to be different. Like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is a very different Joker.
That's the other one. Honestly, I was like, there's another one there somewhere.
It's kind of a big one.
It's in the titular movie. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. So, The Crow, 1994. The night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven and his fiancée are brutally murdered by members of a violent gang. On the anniversary of their death, Eric rises from the grave and assumes the mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger. It's probably the coolest synopsis of any movie ever.
It's up there. It's pretty cool.
Like, I don't know, what's cooler, Resurrected Man on Revenge or Godfather? It's Resurrected Revenge Man. So, you think, Grana, break my heart.
No, look, I'm really not here to shit on this movie. Like, I remember watching it when I was younger because a certain family insisted that it was one of the greatest movies ever made. And I remember
we're so like intertwined to this.
I remember liking it and watching it again here. I'm like, this is a pretty good movie. Like, it's definitely like, how do I put this? Like, it's dripping in that 90s angst. It's dripping in that emo grunge era, and like I can see how people who are into that scene really connected with this movie, and like I think it does that really well. I think it's oozing style is what I will say about it.
Yeah.
And it captures that feeling really, really well. I think Brandon Lee's performance is decent. Like I really wonder if anyone would care about specifically his performance if he didn't die. Like, I don't know. It feels kind of morbid to talk about, and I don't want to say he was a shit actor or anything like that. But I guess watching the sequel to this, I'm like, Brandon Lee, like chef's kiss, he's amazing.
I miss him so much. Rest in peace.
I didn't know I could miss him so much.
Oh my gosh.
But like, great synopsis. That's the story though, right? Like it's very much just a revenge flick, I guess. Like I don't know. There's no. Oh, I don't know. I wonder. Like I didn't come away from this thinking about it for days and days, and analyzing parts of my own life because this movie had touched me so, so deeply. I guess. Like, I don't know. I think back to last fortnight, we talked about Alien Romulus, and some people were very concerned that, it doesn't have a lot to say, and it's just kind of a horror movie, and is not pushing the envelope. Where does The Crow do something different? I guess it's not repeating itself like you feel like it's easy to feel that Romulus is, right? But what is I don't know.
Luke, what do you think? Do you think it?
So
just has anything?
My quick thoughts on it. So, as someone who, as a teenager, I went through a bit of a goth emo phase.
Amen.
Just from 30 Seconds to Mars. So,
Jared Leto again.
Does that count?
I know,
yeah.
Right? So if 30 Seconds to Mars, because I thought Jared Leto was so cool, if I thought he was so cool that I would start, being all gothic in my life, if I'd watched this, how could I have not taken so? And this is a conversation me and my wife had last night where I was like, oh yeah, I probably wouldn't have kids because this would be me now. I was like, I would have just 100% adapted the lifestyle and just like full on gone with it. I would have been like that kid in high school that had a big trench coat on walking around. Yes. We all know one. We all know there was one, but it would have been me. And I can see how it can be influential for younger people to be like, this guy's cool. Like, what a badass. Like, man, when I die, I'm totally going to come back and kill everyone, And it is a cool synopsis. Like when I found that out about the reboot, I was just like, oh, this is perfect. I love Skarsgård. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait to now watch the original because I was like, what a cool plot. And I enjoyed the movie. And I remember looking at it beforehand being like, okay, it's an hour and a half. Awesome. Like, I love a quick, short movie. And somehow it didn't feel like a short movie. Like, I felt like it
Okay.
did feel like it went a bit long. I know, like, the last half hour, I was like, surely it's been an hour and a half by now. Okay, no, it's still got another 20 minutes left. Okay. And I wonder if that's because they do just jump straight into it or jump out the window with it, you know? But I wonder if that's something that I think maybe the reboot does that maybe this one I feel like could have made it a stronger movie is if you build up that relationship and knowing the two characters first. I not that the new one does it well, but I know that it does that first. Like it
It
shows
sure
them
does.
first. And I know they're not great characters or you don't give a shit about them.
Ooh.
But like I wonder if this was shown instead of like constant frenetic flashbacks and being like, okay, these two are in love and this is what happened. If you play it as like a thing. But in saying that, I love the intro. I love the narration from the girl. Her voice is really cool.
Mm.
In WCW, go back to wrestling again, sorry, they had like when he debuted as the Crow's version of Sting, they had like a little boy narrating this whole thing of like, and his vengeance and like this and all this. And it was
Yeah.
like, his name is Sting. And I was like,
Which they
oh, this
just
is so cool. And I used to listen to that music all the time because I was like, oh, this kid narrating is so cool. And so when this movie started and I hear that voice, I was like, oh my God, that's where it's from. This is cool. Yeah, his performance is fine. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, this is another Heath Ledger Joker thing. It's obviously not that. I wouldn't win Oscars or anything like that. But he's got a charisma to him,
Mm.
and
Yeah, I think there's a loss of potential there. I guess I'm sadder about than I will never get a performance the same as that again. I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
Yeah. His performance is interesting. Like it's because it is a lot more. I don't know. Stuffy is not the right word, but it feels a lot more sort of forced and mechanical. But I think there's two things. One, I think that's intentional. I think it is like he is an embodiment of like kind of goth poetry. Like he says these sentences and these lines that are just no one says in a real line. He's just like he's quoting these great literature, like works of literature, and he's just dropping these bizarre lines as well. And out of nowhere, he says, "Victims, aren't we all?" And it's like, why? Why did you say that? Because it sounds cool. Like he's an avenging spirit. He's not, he's not trying to be like, "Hey, just heads up, Tintin. Here's why I'm killing you. It's because you killed my." He's just like, he's a spirit of vengeance, and also it's a mood and a feeling more than anything. And I think I don't know. I guess context is important. Like this is technically a superhero movie. It's based off a graphic novel about someone who would be defined as a superhero. Um, and like we've talked about this ad nauseum, where superhero movies up until really Spider-Man, so you have things like Blade and X-Men, notably, didn't really know what a superhero movie was, and had a sort of I think struggled a little bit with how to translate that. And there are lines in this movie that are taken directly from the page, and like that works probably better on a graphic novel where it's all in your head and there's a little bit more interpretation to it. But I think his delivery in this is good. I don't think it's meant to be natural. He's meant to be an avatar of vengeance. And if that doesn't work for you, that like sure. But I guess comparing it to something like Heath Ledger, where in Dark Knight he is meant to be like that's naturalistic. He's meant to be literally like this complete
anarchy.
Anarchy in human form. Whereas this is like there's no conceit here of it being natural. He's like, no, this guy came back from the dead for some reason, and
For a purpose, and
yeah,
that's the thing. I don't know why. Probably watching the Batman with Robert Pattinson and stuff like that. I expected it to be really broody, and I expected the performance to be really broody, like "Oh, it even rained the day I was born" or something like that. But like it's not like that. He's he kind of has fun with it a bit, like the whole I move and I dance, and he's like shuffling around and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
It took me off guard, but I like it by the end. I like him just going around and messing shit up, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's got a goofiness, right? Like he's not. Yeah, he is brooding. Like there are scenes where he's literally in the.
Yeah.
Well, it's a body double, but like Eric Draven is in there, jumping, like grabbing onto his window and screaming, and then he's playing music on the rooftop. Like that is very broody.
Yes.
But there is a knowing sort of tongue in cheek and almost like a satire, not a satire necessarily, but like an awareness of the absurdity. It's like, yeah, this is a bit of a. I don't know. I feel like we talk about this a fair bit as well. Like movies that take themselves too seriously really lose this where they spend, and like the Batman is kind of guilty of it as well. And I love that movie, but like it is 2.5 hours of long brooding misery.
Yeah,
and just like,
it's very broody. It's very broody.
And like you think about movies that kind of really stand out, and think again like something like compare that to Nolan's Batman's, where there's a humor to it. There is this undercurrent of humor that cuts through the tension and actually makes the drama and the broodiness feel more serious. And I feel like that's a play here, where he's sort of the few moments that really kind of catch you off guard and the jokes and the banter are like, they then make the drama seem more real because it's like, oh yeah, these are actually people because they actually have quips and jokes and some sort of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I'm surprised you had a problem with the pacing. Like, I don't know, this movie flew through for me, I think, and I think it's paced pretty well. Like, it moves at a clip. And, like, they do like to wallow in his despair a little bit, but I think there's a reason behind it, and it's pretty effective, I think, in my opinion.
And that's the thing. I feel like there was a moment, and I think it's after he kills the guy in the car with the flames and stuff like that, where I was like, okay, so there's still 20 more minutes left. But obviously it pivots to who the big bad is because this guy orchestrated it all and everything like that. But then like it does come back around. Like then the church scene I really enjoyed. I was like, okay, cool. I'm invested. I wasn't bored or anything like that. And it could have just been me watching it late at night, and I was just like, oh, okay. I thought like we'd breeze through, but yeah. But yeah, I get it.
But like you said as well, like when you read the concept, and especially with knowing that the remake is out, and being like, this is John Wick, but in a gothic shell. And it's like, I think coming back to this completely blind, because that's exactly what the trailer for the remake depicts, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it kind of, I mean, the actionness of it is important to know, again, with context, because like, you hear this concept, you're like, oh yeah, this is just going to be a guy who's unstoppable. So he's got to be like, literally just killing everybody, and people are going to be shooting him. He's just going to be like, you can't touch me. Yeah. But it's really not like it's a revenge film, but it's really more of like a kind of a gothic romance. Like there are so many
Romeo
flashbacks.
And Juliet, man. It's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, and like a lot of screen time is given to his relationship with Sarah and how she has sort of no mother, and he, it's not just the revenge that's important. It's like it's finding the life that still remains after they're gone. Like the solution is not just kill them all and be good. The solution is actually give Sarah a chance, save Officer Albrecht and stuff. It's like, that's kind of that gothic poetry coming in where it's not just, I've got to kill everyone and then it'll be good. It's like, no, killing isn't important, but what's honestly more important here is him saving Sarah at the end. And that's kind of why he goes to do it, because he needs to save his friends and the people who actually tried to right the wrongs that only he now can. And so when you go into this being like, I'm just going to see 2 hours of revenge, I can see why you'd be a bit disappointed, or at least be like, this is slower than expected.
Yeah. Because
the kills come, but they kind of happen pretty quickly. Like he kills Tintin fairly fast, dispatches with I forget their numbers.
What's his name? Flyboy or
Flyboy?
Funboy.
T-Bird. T-Bird. Funboy and T-Bird, yeah. So he's kind of like dispatches them in really cool, creative ways.
Yeah.
But again, like I don't know, poetic is the term I kept coming to when I was thinking about this. Like, they're not ways where he's like, I'm going to peel the skin off you to make you suffer. He's like, I'm going to put you in a car and slowly drive you off a pole, and you're going to blow up. It's like that's just really interesting and takes a lot of effort and is poetic to watch, and is stylish. Pretty complicated. Probably could have made him suffer more. But so why are you doing this? Like, is it just to get the fix of being like, yeah, I've seen revenge, or is it kind of this strange beauty in the dark? I know.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And that's the thing. It felt cool seeing him like dispose of. Like I like the Tintin scene where he's first really the Crow, and he's coming out of the shadows and dropping down and just messing with him and stuff like that, and then just shish kebabs him.
Yeah.
Which he does with Funboy as well, but with needles instead.
With needles.
And he
Again,
has
like
powers to save that chick from morphine. He
From the morphine.
takes it out of her body.
yeah,
I want to
Morphine's
explore
your
that a
dad,
bit
you
more,
okay?
actually.
just you got to go with it, man. He's come back from the dead a year later. Okay, well, just accept that he can reverse morphine effects.
So apparently in the comics, he doesn't heal. He just is immortal, right? Like he takes the damage, he takes the gunshots, but they don't heal. He just I kind of wish we had that, like just kind of this walking zombie by the end of the movie.
That would have been interesting. That would have been a different take on it. Yeah,
Would have been a lot scarier. I think with all the bullets and stuff like that. I was taken by surprise how much you couldn't really tell if you didn't know that like the lead actor died filming this movie. Like it feels complete. You know what I mean?
I still can't tell like where he's not in there. Like yeah.
So they got really lucky with production. Like, sorry, lucky's the wrong word. They got lucky in terms of he died. So they basically done principal photography, and he got killed. He got killed in the scene where
with Fun Boy.
where he on the bed. And he wasn't even meant to shoot him apparently, but last minute they decided to have him shoot him, and it all went wrong. But so they basically got all his stuff. The stuff they hadn't done is they hadn't got him falling out of the window. And so they superimposed his face onto something else. The scene where he comes back to his apartment, and like he's looking at everything, and he jumps on the window and grabs it and sees that his hands heal. If you watch that scene again, you never see his face. It's all in shade because they just used a body double for that. And so when you know that was not him, it's easy to tell. But he's just like a really jacked guy. And I think that's like one other scene as well that they edited his face over. But it was really like just kind of those last things. So thankfully they'd got all of the principal photography. They'd never had any scenes where they were like, how do we film this where you're clearly seeing him? It's like,
yeah.
And it pays off because that scene with him coming into his apartment, I think, is really, really cool. Whereas
I feel like it feels normal for you to not see his face. It's like he's just come back and he's like crashing around, and then you see him putting the paint on, and then it's his face, and it's like I felt like that's the reason we weren't seeing his face. I didn't feel like, oh, this is because it had to be filmed afterwards, you know?
Yeah, it's like one of those perfect collisions of circumstance, and like they had to do it, and they made it. Ended up being the best choice. I know. I was looking into I was watching a bunch of videos on this, and then I was looking over like 90s films, and I think that the influence of this movie is so much bigger, perhaps, than we realize. Right? Like everyone know. Like I said, there is a cult following. Everyone sort of knows what The Crow is. There's a great scene in The Office where Dwight's like, "Dwight, what's your favorite movie?" And he's walking away. He's like, "The Crow." And that was just kind of a generation. I think a generation of people related to that. Like, yeah, that's us right there. But
most Crow fans are Dwight's.
Yes.
I was kind of. But like you look at kind of the 90s, you guys talked about it before, the 90s and 2000s aesthetics, right? Like this movie is kind of probably the most important movie for it. Things like The Matrix, right? Which is what we now equate with 90s, 2000s style. Like that is taken directly from this. The cool black, the tight black clothes and the cool sort of like edgy style, like that's lifted directly from this. And like that was a Gen X sort of fashions thing, but having it sort of done in such a cool way where it was no longer like, it's no longer just grunge or like Nirvana doing it. It's like, here it is, but in an interesting, polished sort of version. And The Matrix takes that, polishes it more and makes it into its own thing again. But like, I think we incorrectly say The Matrix made that style. It's like, no, I would go out on a limb and say The Crow made that style more than something like The Matrix actually did. And like goes on to define a lot of like the sort of the broody night, even like the early superhero movies, kind of even though they're kind of quaint by today's standards, at the time they were a bit broody. Like Daredevil, Ben Affleck one, he's got a darker suit. It's definitely kind of trying to be shot as
very like broody, man. He like sleeps in a bathtub under concrete and just like awakens.
Oh, that's right.
Like, Hell's Kitchen, you know?
Yeah, like exactly. I think all of that kind of owes its origin to this, which is a big part of its legacy. Like I think that's kind of why people love it. Like this movie had the perfect collision of all those stylistic things. It had the soundtrack, it had the fashion that goth kids were wearing.
So
it had like
Conan.
Yep.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Because there's another series you like with revenge and all this sort of stuff as its
there's a
main
lot.
theme. Yeah, I
Mm.
know you like revenge.
Is it a book that he wrote? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
I mean
Because
yes,
you
there's
can
that
feel
too.
the
Feel the crowness.
Now get out of here. Get out.
Um,
That's true. That's so true.
how much would you love it if this was just like the plot of John Wick 5? He comes back from the dead because the crow brings him back, and he goes on a revenge, killing everyone that
We finally
ever
get.
who wronged him. Which,
Keanu could not play this role.
No.
Keanu
Like-
cannot spout poetry. I'm sorry. It's
thinking
just
I'm
not.
alive again. Thinking I'm back.
Like, yeah, if Keanu's got like a more physicality. That's an interesting idea. Like, what happens to both their careers if Brendan Lee survives, right? Because when does Speed come out? Speed is in
96.
6?
no, 94, same year. Same year.
There you go.
And so they're
Stars.
not quite on the same trajectory. Like Brendan Lee was leaning more into the martial arts, but that's an interesting sliding door. Like, what happens if Brendan Lee survives? Is it like, does he become do they sort of become competing actors for the same role? Are they like Stallone and Schwarzenegger were in the 80s, where they're each trying to be kind of like these. Yeah, I don't know.
If he survives and the movie still does well, then I'd assume he's part of The Crow 2 and The Crow 3 and then doesn't have much of a career after that.
I don't know. Maybe, like, honestly, maybe not, right? Like, maybe he looks at it and goes, why are you making a sequel to this? I want to do something else.
Yeah.
Or potentially, I don't know. But then, like, we'll talk a bit about the story behind Crow 2, where it could have been a very different movie and maybe it could have been great.
It's such a big maybe.
Big maybe.
It is. But Keanu, I don't know. Like, if John Wick is really influenced by this as well. Like, again, this idea of this indestructible guy seeking vengeance, like
Baba Yaga.
Yeah, like this. Yeah, exactly. There's like folklore around him, and just like you can't stop him.
Yeah, even going after like the gangsters and ending up in like clubs and stuff like that. Yeah, you do feel it.
Yeah.
Main
What
thing.
did you guys? Oh, yeah.
I'll just say like this. There's a few movies that have this problem, but in this, I get it. It's the '90s, and a lot of films did this with like gang members and criminals and stuff like that. But man, they're idiots. They're just a bunch of idiots. Like they're just like, how are they like threatening when some of them are like so low IQ level and just like babbering idiots. And it's just like, really, these people are outsmarting like the law and just like are running the streets. Like, why are these idiots running the streets? The
city is a weird place. Like I almost get like Clockwork Orange vibes from it almost. Like it's otherworldly and crime is what rules, like ultra violence is what rules the world. It's not, there is a police force, I suppose, but they seem largely powerless. Like it's like Gotham on steroids almost. Like
like the boroughs in Batman Begins.
Yeah,
all shit. Cops are corrupt.
Yeah, it's going for that like stylistic. Yeah, this is in a well, again kind of reflecting the '90s, like New York in the '80s and '90s was
Detroit.
Really,
yeah,
so this is Detroit, yeah, but like I get. My point is, like, American cities, like even the biggest ones were like crime-riddled places that were really dangerous, and the city was just bad. You don't go to cities, right? Suburbs are where it was safe, and so kind of like reflecting those anxieties of like what's coming. If this is what's happening to the country, what's going to happen in 5-10 years? And yeah, it's like literally this hellscape where Devil's Night for some of people just burning things down. It's like, yeah, we do this every year.
I do like the idea, like when they're talking about like the night before Halloween, Devil's Night. I was like, oh, this is cool, and it's just people are just like, we like lighting things on fire. Woo! And it's just like,
but there's also that cool like real estate subplot of like they're burning them down for a reason. We don't really know why. The top fella's he's looking to get real estate or something.
He's got real estate. He's just trying to drive up the value because the less real estate, supply and demand.
I guess
location.
Yeah. I love that shit because that's relatable, right? These monsters in charge of the real estate
What's happening now, man?
and how they drive people out and they play with their lives. Like, I would be surprised if we soon hear of someone coming back from the dead in real life and killing
landlords.
Killing landlords. Preach. It's
Own wishes.
What did you guys think of the action in this movie? Because it is like it's a lot slower than what we're used to now. There's really not a whole lot of like. There's no real sort of like choreographed fight scenes. Really, it's like the gun. There's the gun shoot.
A
The
lot of
shootouts.
guns being shot. There's a lot of guns being shot a lot of the time.
Yeah.
There's a knife fight. I don't know. To be honest, like, it wasn't super memorable to me. Like, I don't know. It was fine. Like, it was serviceable. I more remember, like, just him getting shot up on the table and, like, you know, not him actually fighting.
Yeah. But that scene as well, like, because that action, right, that's very John Woo. Like, it's clearly taking inspiration from, like, Hard Boiled and The Killer. And so, like, that's what they used to call gun fu. We call gun fu, we now call John Wick style gun fu.
Yeah.
But, like, that sort of old, like, Hong Kong cinema of, like, I don't know, diving around and just shooting guns in, like, cool gesticular ways.
Everyone dual wielding.
Yeah. And, like, jumping behind tables and then flipping out and doing it.
Max
like,
Payne, like, straight up
Max Payne, like, 100% lifted that as well. Because I'd forgotten that was kind of how this was done, but, like, I'm going to bring it up again. The Matrix does the same thing. The Matrix takes the John Woo style and is like, yeah, that's what we do. And everyone's like, hooray, the Matrix. But you know what did it first? The Crow. You know, that makes me...
You love the Matrix.
I do love the Matrix, but Alex Proyas, an important Australian figure, kind of like the Australian David Fincher. He was a music video director, went on to make some of the greatest movies of the 90s. Dark City. He got ripped off not once, but twice. He made The Crow and then he made Dark City, which is kind of the same thing as The Matrix. And it gets overshadowed by a real fancy bullshit made by the Wachowskis. He got done dirty. And I don't think we need to remember.
He's living it up online now, though. He loves watching.
Is he?
You see, his feed is just all sharing, like, people shitting on the remake. Like, he's got this whole thing.
I did see him going out for it.
Yeah, he's just sharing all this stuff. Like, I thought this was just like a money making scheme. Looks like there's not much money to make. So he's loving it. He's living life.
I mean, I hope so. I truly hope. I hope and wish the best for him. But I don't know. It is interesting seeing this. I'm like, man, this guy was kind of tapped into this, like, brooding Gen X zeitgeist before these other movies were. He doesn't quite get the same credit, but I don't know. It bums me out. We need to talk. We need to find a way to talk about Dark City somehow.
Yeah, I agree. I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah. I don't know. Soundtrack. Did you guys care for the soundtrack at all? Because that's always referenced as one of the reasons this movie had such a legacy. And
very 90s, and I enjoy 90s, so it was cool. Yeah. Like, I was vibing to the songs. So
yeah. Nothing more to add. That's fair.
Yeah, nothing more to add. I liked the final showdown in the church and on the roof and stuff like that in the rain. I thought that was all really cool, and him not really being able to heal because they shot the Crow. I enjoyed all that.
When the lightning strikes,
could the Crow just, like, go to Brazil or something for a bit while he's doing all this?
No, it's like
it's need to be nearby.
Yeah, it's got to stay within like a 50-meter radius at all times.
Damn it.
Otherwise, his body just drops.
It just turns to ash or something. Did you guys actually? That's a good question. How do you guys feel about the folklore in this? Because it's like there is no time wasted. It's just like there is a voiceover that says, "Hey, sometimes this shit happens," and then there's
crazy things.
Yeah, Crows be doing that. Yeah. And then they get, like, he's just alive. There's never him being like, why can I heal? He's just like, okay, cool, I'm here to do this. And there is a sort of pursuit by the villain, Top Dollar. He's like, we need to get this power. But it's like, he doesn't really know what he's doing. And he's never like, oh, there's this ancient Tibetan myth about the Crow, and that's what it is. It's just like, there's like, there's a hint at supernatural, and like, they all sort of know it, but they're like, I don't know. Like, did that bother you? Did you want more? Or did you want less? I don't know.
I really like what we got. And the second one, I think, pushes it further in a lot of ways, and it just doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't... I mean, it's done very poorly, to be fair, but I like what we get. Like, I don't know, we've talked a lot about how superhero origin stories are super weak because you're just trying to, create this lore and dump it on everyone as you go. And this movie doesn't waste any time with that, and I don't think it needs to.
I agree completely. I think, yeah. Sorry,
I mean, really, it's in the same vein, I think, and we all agree, like with John Wick. Like, we didn't need to know more about the world and the universe around it.
But that's weird because you're wrong.
You know,
This
a
podcast
lot
is
of people say
unlistenable unless you've listened to every other episode.
A lot of people say John Wick 2 is like The Crow 2.
We're like the we are the MCU of podcasts. You need to listen to all the episodes to get our deep references and callbacks
everywhere.
Yeah, it really pays off for the investor. But I don't know. Did you guys have anything else to really talk about? I feel like I've mentioned most of my main thoughts, aside from me just praising it more.
Yeah, no, look, I had a good time watching it again. Yeah, I was mostly joking at the start about like shitting on it. I do appreciate this movie. Yeah, I just know this movie's not made for me in some ways, right? Yeah. Like I didn't have I wasn't in that scene. I don't even have that much of a connection to the music, although I can appreciate that it fits well. Yeah. And this movie drips with style, but yeah.
Yeah. When did you see it, Brunner? Well, like what age were you?
I would have been 15, I reckon.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you're sort of in that, like in the target audience, but I guess, it's just not for everybody. That's fair.
Brent, I want to hear more about how this influenced you. Like, I keep hearing about this mythical effect it had on your family, but I didn't know you back then.
So,
is this why you had long hair?
Like, yeah, a big part of it. I mean, that was also I didn't want to cut my hair, and I didn't know how to. No one ever taught me how to grow my hair or cut my hair as a child, so my hair always looked like this. Just always looked stupid, and so I think I just grew it out of
I didn't know you, but I knew you as the long-haired dude named Conan, and I honestly just thought it was Conan Barbarian. I was like, oh, he's living it up.
Just as people know Eric Draven, people will know Conan Draven.
That's what you had the same body as Arnold. That's all. I just thought it was.
That's what they say. Look, though, basically, it's I'm from a family of movie lovers, and as often happened back in the day, like a movie would just become a family sort of artifact because it would be watched for whatever reason, and everybody would sort of cling to it. Like I think we've all got stories of movies that we grew up watching, and because our parents did or whatever, and we just obsessed with. And this is one of those. One of my brothers watched this and loved it, raved about it, and then we all saw it. My sister and I were my sister also was very into the goth scene. We both had sort of like that emo phase. And so we saw this very young. Like I've seen this, pre-teen, but it just spoke to that kind of, like that millennial angst, I guess, for no apparent reason, but also just like the styling, I was into horror stuff. And so this movie like ticks all my boxes in that, like cool plot. The action is I think it's really cool. Let's say it's a mood. It is a brooding mood. It is a feeling. And just kind of like soak in all of it, the music, the lighting, the characters, the poetry, all of it. And so it just really like stuck with my family, and we all really rate it.
Next minute you're into AFI and
like legit, like this is all part of my growth as a young emo country Australian kid.
Yeah.
And I remember going to like I have a vivid memory still. I think it was like the year 6 social or the year 5 social maybe. And it was like superhero themed. And guess what superhero I liked? I didn't, I had no real connection for Spider-Man. I'd never read these. My parents never gave me any of that shit. It was the Crow. So I dressed as the Crow. I borrowed my sister's black lipstick and put it on my eyes and my mouth.
Do you have a photo of that?
No.
Oh, dang.
Thank God this is before.
It's somewhere.
But like anytime there was ever a superhero themed dress up, there was at least 3 or 4. I went as the Crow. Because, I'm not going to dress up as Spider-Man as a teenage fat kid. That's just weird. But I can paint my face up like a teenage fat kid.
Yeah.
And people were like, who is this man? And yeah.
There you go. And also, speaking on just, influential and stuff, Eric Draven is a cool fucking name.
It is cool.
It's such a good name. Yeah. Did you guys like Ernie Hudson? As Officer Albrecht? He's in Ghostbusters, if you're wondering where you've seen him.
Yeah, he was good. Okay.
I thought that'd get you.
It's just he's pretty powerless,
I liked him towards the end where he's just, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to let this shit happen.
That's
whatever.
True. Yeah.
You've already demoted me. Screw you guys.
I think he's a really cool human link to it because he's powerless. Because he's not like, I'm going to solve this crime. He's like, we know who did it. But it's like, this is a world where the police can't do anything. And like the only justice that can exist sometimes to an injustice is this supernatural force.
It does crack me up at how at peace he is with this dude being back from the dead. Like a year later, he's just like in his living room, and he's just like, "Man, this is wild. Tell me more."
Yeah.
It's kind of a cliche of like the last good cop, right? Like that's
totally.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
But maybe this is an earlier version of that, and I should give it more credit. Maybe.
No,
I'm sure it's not the first movie to do it.
No, like I'm sure it's a tried and true trope, but as you should know, Andrew, a lot of tropes growing up. Tropes exist for a reason. Like we love them.
It's another inside joke.
It's a deep reference, boy.
I think that's even from bonus XP. There we go. We're getting real deep now.
Nuts. We didn't really. I just wanted to mention this actually before we move on. This is the graphic novel written by James O. Barr. It's interesting. He wrote it as basically as a form of therapy for himself. He was in a car crash and his girlfriend died from a drunk driver. And just completely shattered by that. He grew up as an orphan.
He was an orphan, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, grew up in foster care. So have kind of this movie is kind of like both his existence and his fantasy of because he wanted justice for his girlfriend was killed and there was no justice in that. So he wrote this as kind of as his escapist fantasy of wouldn't it be nice if there was a super worldly way to get that justice? And I think that really plays out where it's this is a sort of a hopeful fantasy, and there is a sense of there's never a sense that the justice is necessarily fixed by just killing the guilty people. I think I mentioned this before, but it's finding the other human relationships, him and Albrecht sort of form a bond, and Sarah gets saved, and her mother gets saved. And it's these relationships around him. And it's that's what's really valuable, and both the fantasy of revenge, but also
what's left.
Yeah, and the power of revenge, but also kind of the futility in a way of how that doesn't actually fix it. And I don't. It's really I've mentioned this at length how trauma has destroyed good art, and sorry, not trauma. Therapy has destroyed art. Trauma is good for art. We need more trauma. Because, granted, to your early point, does this have to say anything? It's I think it just has to, this is what I mean when I say, does a movie say something? I don't think it has to be here is my thesis statement on grief. But what it is this is a guy who was truly feeling something and had a view on a world and an idea of the world. And you can feel that in this. This is a guy trying to come to terms with that and trying to converse with grief and with injustice and with what that means. And has that been done before? Yeah, it's a timeless thing, but I think it embodies something very real and personal, and it also captures a lot about the era that it's set in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else to say before we move on?
Yeah. Good movie.
Let's talk about City of Angels.
Okay. The Crow, City of Angels. I forgot to get my synopsis, but it's all right. I can do it. The night before.
Read the one for the first movie. It's the same thing.
Mechanic, someone or other, and his son are brutally murdered by members of a violent gang. On the anniversary of their death, he rises from the grave and assumes the mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger. It is literally the same plot of the first one. It's just his son has died this time instead of his wife, his fiance. Sorry, what's his name? Vincent Perez is the actor.
Ash
Corvin.
Sick names. It's not a bad name. It's not a bad name,
but not as Eric Draven.
It's not. They're all really good with the bird stuff. I think the other one's Corbus, which means crow. It's bitchin'. Anyway, all right, Crow City of Angels. Luke, you really shit the bed here and didn't watch this. So
I didn't know it was a commitment.
Shame on you. I was I think I implored you guys to watch it.
Implored? That's not we're watching.
There's a text conversation to prove it. The receipts are there.
You're right. Grant, what were your thoughts on this? You'd never seen it before.
No, I hadn't seen it before. I had zero expectations. It did not live up to them. Look, I guess the thing for me is, watching this, I'm this movie does nothing that the first movie doesn't do a million times better. The plot is nearly identical. Even the mood, it doesn't get it right. It feels almost like it's swapped I don't know, the emo sensibilities for glam rock or something. I just don't I don't know how they busted it so bad, but it just feels very off. Like I said, they lean more into the supernatural side of things. So the bad guy has like an oracle that's like how does it go? She's the one telling it, like explaining how the crow's link works and how they can defeat him. And then at the end, the bad guy drinks the blood of the crow, gets the crow's powers, and then the hero Ash summons a murder of crows to kill the bag. Like, it all just it's so confusing and muddy and terrible.
In the weirdest CGI death I've ever seen. I think it's so bad. It's so weird.
I need to check it out now.
Yeah, this movie's not really worth talking about without knowing the story behind it, right? So it's written by David S. Goyer, who has pedigree. Wrote Blade. Look, he's one of your boys, right?
Yeah, but I don't know where I know him from, but I know that name.
Yeah. He wrote Blade, the Blade movies. He wrote Batman Begins.
Dark Knight.
And Dark Knight, yeah. So he's
Dark City.
Yeah, wrote Dark City. It is. He's Alex Proyas as well. Right, but yeah. And then he's just written a bunch of different things. So he's made some crap for sure, but he's got a long history. He's written a lot of these sort of gothic flavored movies, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. But basically, so this was made by the Weinstein Company, and on the long list of their crimes, butchering this movie is probably second only to the horrible sex offenses, I would say. Where basically the director, who I need to get up again, I think he's
Tim Pope.
He's also a Frenchman. No, Tim Pope. He's not a Frenchman. What am I saying? Tim Pope. So Tim Pope's making this. This is one of his early movies. He made this, and basically in the editing phase, the Weinsteins were just like, we're going to take over this. You don't get any say over what it looks like now. And they ruined it. They cut it from, apparently the original version was much longer, like 2 and a bit hours, and it's much more of kind of like more of a love story and much more of kind of like a theatrical sort of, it's just a whole different movie, apparently. Whereas they recut this to be very much a remake, like a rehash of the first one. They cut it to just be like, this is the same revenge story. And what a friggin' terrible choice, because Grant, you're completely right. This is just the first movie, but worse in every way.
Yeah.
Like, the human connection, I can't remember her name, but like there's kind of got this weird love story, but there's nothing built there. There's no reason for them to have it.
Yeah, so like Sarah, the little girl from the first one, is an adult in this movie. And I actually kind of like the idea of like having her be like kind of this connection who, like, I love the idea of her being someone who, like, every few years she knows that the crow is bringing someone back, and she's the human connection that kind of goes and gets them and kind of guides them a little bit on their way or something like that. Like, I think that's a fun idea, but it doesn't go anywhere with it. And then, they do this weird kind of, like, love tension thing out of nowhere that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange. It's like she's infatuated with him and he's struggling with, like, I want to love you, but I have to kill these people. It's like, what? Like... Yeah, I've got a problem. But it's like there's nothing built there, and I think again, this is what would have been in the original version. Is like there is much more of a tragic love story, I think, between them. Like there is like fan made edits. There is a director's cut that isn't technically a director's cut. It's like remade by some other group, but Tim Pope gave his blessing to. It's got a name. It's on YouTube as well, and it's like 2 hours long. It's paced differently. It starts with the murder rather than having the murder like halfway through. But it's not the real version. So again, like there is this. It's basically Aliens 3. It's the Aliens 3 of this universe where some guy who seemed to have a vision and like could have actually been potentially a good movie from all reports just got completely ruined by the Weinsteins and just really like left it because it left a big pile of shit because this movie's really bad. Like it's really bad. It's like Iggy Pop's having a lot of fun in it, which is kind of funny.
This director's got the same pedigree as Fincher in that as well. Like lots of music videos, and then this movie, and it's kind of dog shit.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Crow actor? What's his name? Vincent Perez.
I get so. I don't mind him. I think he's not giving much material here. Like his quotes about like. What do you call a great gathering of crows and murder? It's like, it's just kind of dumb.
Yeah.
I do think that there is I think he's kind of all right. Like he's got a sad clown energy. Like he's got a tragedy to him here where like a soft-talking sort of Frenchman. It's like, yeah, this guy's kind of, I don't know, there's something else there that's a bit different to Brandon Lee's. And so that's why I would love to see the original version of this, where it's like more of kind of like this poetic, almost opera
Yeah.
of this tragic guy who's returned to life and has to deal with that. What did you think?
Yeah, I think he was okay. Like, again, it made me appreciate Brandon Lee's performance more. Yeah, like he didn't. I don't know. He did like obviously he doesn't have much to work with either. Like say what you want about how it was cut together, the script is still pretty bad. Like the dialogue in this movie is pretty horrid.
No, it is. I agree. Like everything Judah says, the big bad is just awful. Yep. Like he's the weirdest like monologuing, pseudo philosophizing. Like he's got a really good voice. But it's just like, God, every line you say is so stupid.
Yeah. They try to do a lot of this, like, I don't know, he's talking to that oracle and there's a lot of, like, voodoo stuff going on. And, yeah, you're right, he just monologues a lot. It's pretty...
Yeah. It's just, it's really nonsense. And, yeah, leaning into the supernatural rather than just, like, these are a bunch of criminals, I think is a bad idea. What do you think of the LA setting? Like...
Is it LA?
That's what the City of Angels is, man.
I guess so. I guess that makes sense. I had no effect on the story, as far as I could tell.
Yeah. I do think that's like they're trying to go for a different palette. The lighting, like, there's a lot more of sort of a...
The piss filter?
Yeah, like, basically, right? And again, I can't really tell because we watched it in 360p. I'm not sure if it was just what was blurry and what was real. It's kind of a bad memory, but...
No, I was looking at Reddit reviews of this and everyone was talking about the piss filter, so it wasn't just YouTube doing that.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I don't know.
Sounds like I missed out on a real gem here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like there's some funny parts. There's a part where Thomas Jane's like just jerking it to a window really violently.
Like really graphically.
That sounds hilarious.
No, it's a ride because he just turns up there and then he's just like just non-stop.
He really goes for it, actually.
That's what I mean.
In 360p, and I can just imagine Griner watching it at 1.5 speed as well. That would have been a scene.
It's like a machine gun going.
No, I had to put it at 0.5 speed for that scene.
Slow it down for that bit.
I needed to see that O face, man.
It went for 12 minutes.
It was intense, but then it's great because then it cuts to Vincent Perez's fly through the window.
Yeah, actually, that bit was pretty good. I'll give it that. Even if it was a little graphic for YouTube standards.
Yeah. I truly think because it's 360, no one knows what's happening.
Yeah, you're right.
You got to interpret. I think I don't know, that scene's kind of funny. I think his death scene with his son, like, again, I don't like the flashbacks, but like if it's done as just like here's the scene happening, I think it's pretty effective. Because it's like his son just kind of stumbles upon a murder, and then he's begging for his life, and they just get killed. So that's really horrible.
It is,
and I think that actually works well. So there are a handful of moments that are okay. But then there's things like where they talk to the Sarah finds another little girl who's basically the surrogate Sarah in the first movie. It's like, you don't need this.
Yeah, and they really don't do much with her at all. She kind of just shows up randomly.
Turns up at the end again to be like, where are you going, Mr. Crow? Yeah. And yeah, and I liked all this, also the Day of the Dead iconography, like Day of the Dead's coming up. And so there's a lot of scenes where everyone's wearing like the costumes. And again, that kind of looks really theatrical, like this idea of mimes and clowns and Vincent Perez just being a sad clown. Like there is an idea here that I don't think it would be a good movie, even the original, like the true version. But I don't think it would be the dumpster fire that is this that we get.
Yeah, sure, I'll give it that.
Do you have anything else you want to say? Or should we move on?
No, let's move on.
All right, The Crow 2024. Let me just get a synopsis. The night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven and his fiancée are brutally murdered by members of a violent gang. Immediately after his death, Eric rises from the proverbial grave and assumes the mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger.
Immediately?
Yeah, big difference. Like this is literally he dies and he's just back. I really wish you guys had seen this movie.
We tried.
I know you did.
We did everything in our power to watch it, except for drive to another town.
Yeah. You did nothing and you're all out.
This movie was not a movie to drive 2 hours to go watch.
Definitely not. I saw this on a special release a week before its normal release. It's like Friday Fright Night, and I think everyone in the cinema I saw it with was a little bit disappointed. It was funny to go to see it though. Like there was a bunch of like lonely, sort of older looking goth kids who clearly haven't grown out of that phase. A couple of real weirdos, and then a couple of there was a few like teens, a couple of teen girls and their dad, which was a bit weird.
So were
And
you an
then
outlier, or which group did you belong with?
I was in. So the back two rows were the weird angry loners, and there was like 6 of us. It was
Yeah,
great.
okay.
And we sort of, like you look over and like, yeah, we know why we're here. We all went through some shit in school.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you really want to know my thoughts, go on to Letterboxd and read my very funny review. My username is GRUESEOUS. I think I summed it up pretty well. Basically, this movie, nothing really works. It's nothing works except for the action. The action is really good. The final act is basically John Wick Crow. So he's just walking through.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah, like I remember watching this. I was like, there were some parts where I was like cackling because there's there's just some gore in it. There's this great scene where he just like pulls his sword out of himself and there's this blood everywhere. It goes full like kind of crazy and it's like well choreographed, well shot. Just dudes getting hacked apart, and this guy's just getting like shot to pieces and just keeps coming. It's really satisfying, but it's also bad because he's just taking out nameless henchmen, and it's like, yeah. But if the whole movie was that, I think it'd be really good. It'd be like a modern adaptation of it would just be like The Crow for 2024, where it's like action has changed.
Yeah. And
so it's just a revenge shoot. If they'd stuck to that and made a movie that was an hour and a half and, still had some of the waxing poetry, it would have been a good. But the problem is it spends an hour and a half telling a love story that is so shit. It takes effort to write something that bad.
And I've read a bit like that it's just two characters who aren't likable at all. And it's almost cringe that they're like, oh, we're cool, we're like criminals and like we, all that sort of stuff. Because like, man, when this was announced, like obviously I'd never seen the original, but I love Skarsgård. Like I think he's awesome. And yeah, I know people when the first look at him came out, people were like, oh, but I was like, you know what? It's giving me DMC Dante vibes, and everyone hated on that, and I loved it. I loved
it was
DMC
good.
because I'd never played the original Devil May Cry, and so I was like, this is cool. And he looks like a spot on ringer for like if they'd have made a movie on that DMC game, he would play it.
He'd be the one, yeah.
And I was just like, okay. Then when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, it's not a great trailer, and everything about the love connection is cringe. But then when it started showing like the action scenes of it in the trailer, I was like, oh man, this is going to be good. Like I'm actually keen for this. It's going to be enjoyable at least. Like I didn't think it was going to be a great movie, but I was like, I am down for this like cool gothic, John Wick basically.
Yeah.
And then when the reviews started rolling in, like the first article I saw that was like, after 50 reviews, it's at like 1%. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it was
like this is horrible. And the reviews I've read are just straight up like, this is insulting. Like this is an insultingly bad movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I haven't seen something like that since Alien Resurrection. So
the other best Letterboxd review was like, in hindsight, I suppose I probably could have just set my money on fire and pissed on Brandon Lee's grave myself.
One of the reviews I saw was Dead on Arrival, like its former star. Like people were just brutal about this movie.
Yeah, people are not receiving it well, and for good cause. Like, I'll come back to that, but I'll finish my thoughts and then we'll move on to sort of the other stuff. Like all the action, the problems they showed the action in the trailer. If they'd kept all that action till the movie, it would have been more exciting. If they just made it an event, like there is some really good sound design in this. The gunshots are incredibly like loud and they feel like gunshots would. And there's like this great scene where he's in the car trying to stop somebody and they're like trying to shoot each other and they just shoot and his hearing goes. It's like, yeah, that's what it'd be like. It'd be in a small and close space. And like it's really loud and chaotic, and you feel like he has no idea what he's doing, but he can't be killed. So it's like it just keeps going and getting messier and messier, and stuff like that is really good. But then those are a handful of scenes, and the rest of the movie is edgy. Is the right word? It's like he's no longer a gothic warrior poet. He is an edgy SoundCloud rapper, and it's cringe. Like he's got the
Is
tattoo.
he actually a rapper?
No, but he looks just like so many of
Okay.
those SoundCloud rappers. Like
So he doesn't look cool.
I don't
haven't
think so.
seen
Like
much, but yeah.
he looks really lean and he's in incredible shape. Like he's just so skinny and muscular. So like he looks interesting in that sense. But like he's just got all the tats on the face, like all SoundCloud rappers do. His whole character is just like he's basically I've got trauma, and then he finds Shelley, played by FKA Twigs, who's a musician, and she's a terrible actress. Should not be acting, really, really bad. And the whole thing is like they're just addicts and they're lost and they've got trauma and they're really sad and they find each other in rehab and they're like, we're the only, like there's literally a scene where they're like, put your hand up if you've been betrayed by everyone you love. And they're the only two people walking into the circle. Oh, that's why they're together, because love is trauma. And it's like, this is what a 14-year-old is their idea of like tragic love story, right? Of like, yeah, and like, oh, if we're all sad and hate each other, then we find love in our misery. It's like that's fucking unhealthy. That's bad for kids to think. So the problem is they lean into that. They tell a love story. They show a lot of time with them being like, let's just hang out with our weird, like our other edgy friends. And it's like, this is boring. I don't care. I just need to be told you're in love and let's see the revenge and the interesting atmosphere. And the whole villain is like, there's a satanic plot where like the villain has literally got eternal life because of a deal with the devil. And he's got to like go and stop him. Like he's trying to steal Shelley's soul. It's so fucking stupid. Goodness me. Yeah.
So poor Skarsgård. Like they should have got Jared Leto for this. Like, this seems like
honestly might have made it more interesting. Like this would have made it a more
straight up do the Joker again from Suicide Squad. Tats on the face and everything. Yeah, like I get
Joker vibes from his get up a little bit.
That's the thing. Yeah, I'm disappointed we couldn't go see it. I would have liked, and there's a part of me that still wants to see it, like just to see how bad it is. And I probably will watch it when it comes to streaming, which I believe is like in a week. Because it would be fast. They're definitely not making money at the cinema.
No, it's not doing well. Like the action is great. Like it's good for just the end hour and 40 minutes. Like the action is really good.
And it's close to 2 hours, isn't it, this movie?
Yeah, it's 2 hours. So it's it's a lot of scenes of them like I don't know, him in limbo and like them in the sea, and it's a metaphor for them going to the afterlife. It's just
what's it like being different with him coming straight back?
Honestly, that's not a big deal. I don't think that's a huge issue. I'm not like he needs to be dead for a while. It makes the story different because in the first one, there is that sense of Sarah is more grief-riddled. The city seems to have gotten a little bit worse. Albrecht's been knocked back to beat cop. And so that's like the dynamics different, whereas there's some cool stuff. Like this just means he literally wakes up and he's already trying to figure out what's happening. It just it's not a huge issue. The problem is like the whole detective storyness of it is really lame. Like he just kind of stumbles upon who he needs to kill. There's no sort of like going to the pawn shop and being like, hey, where did you get this? It's just like he's like walks along the street and he looks in a car and he's like, hey, you're the guy who killed me, and then it's like
what are the odds?
Yeah, it's
I forgot to mention it. I enjoyed the pawn shop scene in the first one. Like I enjoyed him like bashing everything and blowing the place up with the guy in it.
Yeah.
And that actor is funny, the shop owner. But yeah, it's a shame. It sounds like it's a shame.
It's like it is. This movie's been in development for about 15 years. Like I can remember early 2000s, even the rumors of a remake, and like it went through so many different people. Jason Momoa was attached for a long time. There's concept art of him in the makeup ready, and I think he would have been really good. Like he looks really cool. It's just it went through a bunch of different people, a bunch of different studios, could never get off the ground for whatever reason. So I guess why do you guys think this franchise seems to have so much trouble? Like.
Well, the other half of that is why do they keep trying, right? Like, what about this franchise, makes it warrant 3 sequels and a remake, right? Like,
and the TV series.
Surely it doesn't now. Surely this is the final nail.
Yeah, you have to wonder.
13 million at the box office. Why would they make another movie? Like, and why would anyone try this again with the disaster this was?
Well. But at the same time, they keep doing it. Like they've said that after every one. After City of Angels, they said that. After Salvation, they said that. After Wicked Prayer, which is it's a pile of dog shit. They said the same thing, and they still try. It's like there is some reason they keep trying to remake it though as well. It's not like
it should work. It should work. Like you hear the plot and you think someone in the right hands could make a dope movie out of that.
Simple
But they
conceit.
don't.
This is like literally just a revenge story, right? Like they're a dime a dozen.
John Wick's super popular.
Yeah.
It's killing at the box office every time.
Yeah.
It has that kind of anthology factor to it, right? Like, it's The Crow brings back a different person the next year on a different holiday, the day before the 4th of July. And like, I don't know, that almost writes itself, it feels like. But yeah, I just don't know why they haven't been able to make it work. I don't understand.
A different big name actor every year and have a new one every year. Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, they're all begging for it. It's like what we talked about with things like Predator, where it's like this just seems like a simple formula. You just put it in a new setting and be like, yeah, person trying to survive. It's like, yeah, person has to kill bad people. It's like it's weird that you can get it so wrong, honestly. Like
I wonder if they did that right and they started getting it right, how long before people tire of it though? How long before people are like, you have to mix up the formula. You can't just have him come back the day before another holiday. I don't know. Are we that fickle?
that's a good question. We do because we do love just remakes of it, and like I think that a good remake, literally just like the story retold, people would eat up now. It's been 30 years. I don't think like the every 2 years would work. I think like if it was just the Crow, I don't know, Norway, and it's like, whoa, we're in a different part of the world now. It's like that wouldn't work. It'd just be like, yeah, we've seen this. I agree. But like at the same time, we have those direct to streaming like action films that are just the same sort of concept. I think there is.
What if you do this movie but set in like Norse, and it's like it looks like an Odin thing of this raven saving like a Viking warrior and bringing him back from the dead, and him just going on like a revenge thing. It's kind of like the Northman, then I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got that with another
Skarsgård,
and it failed as well,
which is a tragedy. Yeah, movie's great. It's part of me wonders if it's that thing where it's like these movies are also the fact that they're so simple is kind of the problem with them in terms of why make a revenge movie with this supernatural bent from a cursed franchise when you can just make John Wick. Like John Wick could literally be a Crow movie, right?
Yep.
But instead of being immortal, they give him bulletproof suits.
Well, yeah, and in the first one, at least, they're just like instead of making him immortal, they just make him really, really good at killing people. And it's like and it's essentially the same concept. Like replace the person with a dog, and those are the same sort of movie and formula. And so I wonder if that's a part of it where it's like, again, why would you make a Viking version when you can just make a standalone cool Viking movie? Because the problem is now, I think City of Angels, again, the Weinsteins really did some terrible things, and this is the second worst thing they ever did, is they ruined the franchise and they've tainted it. So now if you make a Crow movie, you immediately are like, ugh, that shit again.
I feel like the mainstream audience doesn't know that there were Crow sequels. I had never heard of another Crow movie. I'd only heard of The Crow. And I was like, oh my God, they've been trying for ages to do another one, like a remake. And this is a remake. And then when you started talking about, oh, there's 4 others, I was like, what the hell? I had no idea.
Super fan, yeah. So, maybe you're right.
They're buried.
Then why is it? Why can't they do it? Like, why can they not make this right?
It's a great question.
Is it the supernatural element? Like, Grant, you said this about City of Angels, where they lean too much into the.
That's not why this one failed, though. Like if this had been great, like this was like a good film, and reviews started coming out, and people were like, oh my God, what a banger, and it's 98%. Does it do well at the box office, or does it still fail at the box office?
It's got to do better than what it did, surely.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it makes it like a box office hit.
50 million's not a huge budget, right? Like I feel like it's making its money back and then some if it reviews better. But
yeah, I think if it reviews well, I think it does what John Wick does, where it was like becomes a sleeper hit, does huge on streaming, and then gets a sequel that everyone turns out to see. I don't know if it would end up being like people at the movie would see it, but because it has an identity, like it has a unique style that if people are like, oh, this is a great movie that stands out a little bit, they might. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if the supernatural part turns people off. But again, I don't know if anybody's going into this being like, oh, it's got supernatural. I don't want that. Like, I don't know. Is the world
I
just
don't think
not?
you have to play that up. Like, you don't have to go into that knowing that, though, right? Like,
No, yeah, yeah.
I think keep it at the same level they kept the first one. And I feel
I
like
think
there's
that,
a nostalgia for that emo era too, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a real, I don't know, My Chemical Romance. People, I feel like that's having a comeback for some reason. Like, I'd
guess
see
who
it
went to their
everywhere.
tour last year?
That guy, right?
As the Crow. I dressed up as the Crow. I saw all the other crows there.
I love this whole idea of you just go as the Crow to every function. Like my mate's wedding, I went as the Crow.
Is it fancy dress? Like, they got to
Children's
dress
party.
fancy.
I went as a crow.
And
Went as the crow.
I just stood in the background of my friend's wedding and was just like, I never got to have a wedding because I got killed the night before.
Oh, I really should have committed to that bit. That would have been great. God damn. I still might. Yeah, like, I think you're right, Grotto. Like, emo is starting to reach that phase of, like, the 80s has had such a comeback, and, like, 90s is coming around now, and 2000s even. Like,
Yep.
we're seeing movies set in 2000s. We're seeing these things come out. I wonder, I think a part of this one, at least the disservice of this, was, like, making him an edgy SoundCloud rapper is not a choice. Like, if they'd made him look like the original, instead of being like, let's DMC him, let's make him short with tattoos, like,
That's what I was going to say. Like, if I feel like Jared Leto's Joker has poisoned this sort of thing, where I feel like
short hair.
Like no, but like it is what so many people compared it to straight away. As soon as the first images of him came out, picture like Skarsgård with like the long trench coat, same outfit, white face paint with the black stuff and longer hair, like a true homage to the original look.
Yeah.
And like the first poster of that comes out, and people are like, oh wow, this could be cool. Like this could be cool. Instead of being like, oh man, this is some Gen Z TikTok thing. Like, yeah.
No, I think that's it. I think, yeah, like, this movie feels like it was made by a committee in a lot of ways. It feels like you can feel the iterations in it, where it's like there was ideas that just got chopped and changed, and some stuck, some didn't. And the guy who directed it, Rupert Sanders, is like he's a hack. Like, he made Snow White and the Huntsman. He he blew up his marriage by cheating with Kristen Stewart. So shame on both of them. Like, just not a he's really one of those guys. He probably shouldn't be making movies. He hasn't made anything good, but he keeps getting jobs somehow. It's like there's no sense of, like, yeah, there's no reason for this movie to exist as it is besides the milking of IP. And I'm like, if it had been made as a faithful remake of, like, yeah, let's do it as they were and try to just, I don't know, either capture that era or even, like, do it maybe a little bit more modern but still with the same broad strokes, I think it could have been better.
Matt Reeves, make the next The Crow.
Like, the Batman is basically the Crow.
The Batman, that's the thing. The Batman, I feel like, is the best iteration we'll get of the Crow, and just like vengeance, like hell yeah, that's straight up that the night before Halloween and everything.
Yeah, definitely has some of the shared elements. All right, should we rank them? It's
Sure.
I like.
Yeah.
Griner likes the 381 the most. The 380p.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas Jane just jacking it.
Yeah, it feels weird to rank them. The original's the best. There you go.
Well,
Conan, what's your ranking of all of them?
Yes, oh, here you go. Here's for the super fans.
Where does the reboot sit?
Rank the episodes individually, please.
Easily. Wicked Prayer is the worst. It's got Edward Furlong. Bad choice for everybody. Then City of Angels. Then probably the remake. Then Salvation. I remember Salvation being good. It's got Kristen Stewart in it. Sorry, Kristen Dunst. It's a very young role.
So the remake is better than City of Angels?
Like, City of Angels is really shit. Like I said, dude, in the remake, the action is really good. And there are some scenes where there's moments where I'm like, this is cool.
I will watch it when it's out to stream.
Doesn't sound like a fun, bad movie to me. I won't watch it, is what I'm saying.
Like,
I'll watch the action scenes.
Watch it, but skip to the end where he's just like, where he puts the trench coat on and he's like,
I saw you love that moment, like Avengers, like where he suits up with the.
Yes,
the
that's my. What is with movies and just being like, you want to see them in the suit? Let's wait till the last 10 minutes to show you the suit. Like, terrible idea. Whoever came up with that is an idiot.
I hate that.
Put the friggin' suit on. And they do the same in this, yeah. Anyway, and then Salvation and the original, for obvious reasons. All right. Well, that's the Crow. The carcass of, and some parts seen, some parts not. Next week, we're going to do the Clerks trilogy. Speaking of the 90s, yeah. Clerks, baby. So Clerks 1, 2, and 3. The, what's his face? Kevin Smith movies. Blanked there for a minute.
I have never seen them.
No, me either.
Wow. Yeah, I thought you would have seen it.
Then get ready for me talking at you for a lot more next fortnight. I've seen them, but I haven't seen the third one, so I'm keen to watch that. All right. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. If you want a supernatural revenge western, I wrote that. It's his book. It's called Taste of Iron.
Yes.
Main character's name is Arthur Draven.
Oh, see, you could have had yeah.
Yeah, I know I missed an opportunity there. If you like this episode or this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on Spotify or wherever you listen. We're on YouTube as well if you want to see some pretty good stylings from Luke over there.
Exactly. And congrats, boys. Episode 100. Well done.
Woo!
We made it. So subscribe and celebrate with us. We just hit 500 subscribers. We're on our way to take down Mr. Beast.
It's coming, yeah.
The allegations don't get in.
All right. Yeah, thank you again. And join us next time for Clerks. See ya.
Yeah.